In today's lecture, we will understand about data models, schemas, and instances. Now here is a blueprint of a construction site. In civil engineering, when a building is to be constructed, the engineer will always design a blueprint. But for a naive user, it becomes very difficult to understand how the final product or how the final building will look like. It becomes very difficult to understand the final structure of the building looking at this blueprint. So, the architect designs a 3D model which will show every minute detail about the exterior and the interior of the final product. This helps the naive user to understand the entire model. So basically, this 3D model will not give us the implementation details, but will help you understand the structure of the building. So basically, it is a kind of abstraction over here, wherein it suppresses the implementation details of the building and only highlights the essential features for an improved understanding. The same way, when we have to design a database, we design it with the help of a data model. A data model is a collection of concepts that can be used to describe the structure of a database. So what do you mean by structure of a database? It means the data types, the relationships, and the constraints that are applied to the data in the database. Now we'll have a look at the different categories of the data model. So prior to that, some more information about data models. Most of the data models also includes a set of basic operations for specifying retrievals and updates on the database. The database designers specify a set of valid user defined operations that are allowed on the database. Generic operations like performing an insertion on the database, deleting some records from the database, updating or modifying some records, or searching for some kind of information are included in the basic data model operations. In the basic relational model, there is a provision to attach behavior to the relations in the form of persistent stored modules, which are known as stored procedures. When we study about SQL, we will see in details what are the stored procedures. Now coming to the categories of data models. Basically there are three models: high level, also called as conceptual data model, representational or implementational data model, and finally the low level or the physical data model. We'll look at the first level, that is high level or conceptual data model. A conceptual data model is an organized view of database concepts and their relationship. The purpose of creating a conceptual data model is to establish entities, their attributes, and the relationship between the entities. In this data modeling level, there is hardly any detail available about the actual database structure. So basically it provides concepts that are close to the way many users perceive data. The three basic tenets of conceptual data model are entity. An entity represents a real world object or concept. For example, an employee or a project from the mini world that is described in the database. Next, as an attribute. An attribute represents some property of interest that further describes an entity, such as an employee name or salary. So basically it is a characteristics or property of an entity. And finally, a relationship. A relationship among two or more entities represents an association among the entities. So basically it is the dependency or association between two entities. We see an example of a conceptual data model. If I want to represent information about customer and product using a conceptual data model, so how do I do it? I represent two entities, the customer entity and the product entity. The name of this entity is customer, the name of this entity is product. The attributes of the customer are customer name and customer number, whereas the attributes of the product are product name and product price. The relationship between customer and product is sales. So basically it is the products that are sold to a customer. So in this way, information can be represented using a conceptual data model. Next, we see about low level of physical data model. Concepts provided by a low level data model are generally meant for computer specialists and not for the end users. Okay. So basically it provides concepts that describes the detail of how data is stored on the computer storage media. The physical data model describes how data is stored in files in the computer by representing information such as record formats, record orderings, and access path. An access path is a structure that makes the search for a particular database record efficient. We finally move to the last model, that is representational or implementational data model. The representational or implementational data models are the models used most frequently in traditional commercial database management system. This includes the widely used relational data model. So representational data models hide many details of data storage on disk, but can be implemented on a computer system directly. The representational data model represents data by using record structures and are also called as record-based data models. A very good example of a representational or implementation data model is SQL, Structured Query Language, which we'll be studying in detail in the second unit and in the third unit. Now moving on to the next topic, that is schema, instances, and database states. So what do you understand by a database schema? In any data model, it is very important to distinguish between the description of the database and the database itself. The description of a database is called the database schema, which is specified during the database design and is not expected to change frequently. The database schema is also called as intention. The figure in the slide shows the schema diagram. The diagram displays the structure of each record type. Okay, so here it gives the structure of student, course, the prerequisite, the section, and the grade report along with their attributes. but it does not show any actual instances of the record. Basically, it is not displaying, it does not give you any information about the records or the rows in the tables. Each object in the schema, for example, if you consider the student, for example, the record in this table is called as a schema construct. Database state, also called as snapshot, also called as instances, also called as current set of occurrences or extensions. So what does it mean? So what do you understand by database state or a snapshot? The data in a database at a particular moment in time is called as database state or a snapshot. It is also called as the current set of occurrences or instances in the database. The next term is schema evolution. We may decide that another data item needs to be stored in each record in a file. For example, in this particular table, that is the student table, we have the attributes name, student number, the class, and the major of the student. But now we plan to add a new attribute, that is date of birth, to the student schema. Then this will be called as schema evolution. Thank you.